I actually want to start by talking about this article out of Washington Post regarding a potential surveillance state, and really, it comes from the idea of, like, if you look at the countries that have done well so far dealing with all of this whole crisis, it's been the countries that have been a little bit more authoritarian. Some would use the word draconian. I'm sure you've heard that quite a bit. Yesterday I went out. I was going somewhere. I was going to get my lawnmower fixed. There's like nothing else to do, so I've been doing a ton of lawn work in between editing videos and shooting videos. And I saw some people playing basketball, like 3 games of people playing basketball. And I was just like, if this is the way people are going to treat this thing, which it does seem that this is the way people are treating it, it's not extremely serious. I actually just got off a phone call with somebody who is in Malta, which is, I guess, like 40 miles away from Italy. And they were talking about how people there are out. Like they're out, they're going to lunch and dinner, and they're just doing their thing. And it's just like, if it takes like some major lockdowns to get this thing under control, could we be heading to a place where maybe not martial law per se? And it's scary to think, and I probably would have said there's no way initially, but because we have this American attitude of, like, you know, freedom of choice and you can't tell me what to do, and, you know, like I got to do what's best for me. The flip side of that is, well, it's harder to kind of corral something like this. It's harder to slow the spread of this virus. But there's this article out of Washington Post by Ben Power, and he's talking about how, you know, other countries have responded. And like I said, the countries that seem to do the best have been the countries that have been the most authoritarian, the ones who have, you know, made people actually go out and sign up for this app. This is one of the measures they took in China. There was like an app where they would track your movement. So if you had been in contact with somebody who later on was, who they found to have the virus, they would then do contact tracing and then go back and say, oh, you were with this person. They'll probably send you a notification through the app, and now you need to be either quarantined or you need to come in here and we need to check you. And that was one of the best ways to really get this thing under control. And you would think something like that would never happen here, but as the virus continues to spread, and, you know, I just saw a report even this morning, and I saw Dr. Fauci come out and say there could be up to 200,000 deaths from this thing. There's a pretty good shot that we might have to do some type of contact tracing more extensively. I know they're doing it in at least Dallas, but obviously it's extremely difficult to really do complete contact tracing when you're asking somebody, hey, where did you go? Who did you interact with? As opposed to, all right, let me see your phone with all your data that will show me exactly where you were, who was in that proximity within that 6 feet range, and who is likely to be someone who we need to now test. UK officials are reportedly building an app for voluntary mass surveillance, asking citizens to temporarily share location data as an act of patriotic duty. Singapore has rolled out a similar app to augment its aggressive contact tracing strategy, boosting efforts to identify anyone who might have crossed paths with an infected person. Other governments do not give the choice to opt in and sharing their data. Mandatory surveillance programs claim sensitive information like locations without the ability of citizens to opt in. This may provide better data for efforts at contact tracing, but the downside is far greater intrusion into individual privacy. I guess at a certain point, I just decided, hey, unless I'm going to be somebody who wants to move to the mountains and be a complete recluse and be away from society, there's no real way to avoid it. Like, you kind of have to buy in some way. You know, just from social media, you know, I run a business. Like, I don't think you can run a business and be somebody who hides in the bushes. Like, this doesn't work. So if you want to be a part of society, you know, in America these days, modern society, you got to buy in a bit. But seeing that the UK is offering a voluntary app, that could be very helpful. But of course, voluntary means the same people who won't follow the order right now, who won't buy into the system right now, are going to continue to do what they've been doing. That might not be enough. And considering this is exponential growth, it might have to become a mandatory measure. Now, in Israel, the government designated the virus as an issue of national security, allowing its internal security agency to tap a previously undisclosed database of highly detailed cell phone information. By tracking movement and communications of the entire population, authorities have more tools to retrace the past activities of all infected individuals and alert anyone who may have been exposed to a potential carrier. this is scary stuff. But like I said, I think we may ultimately have to head in this direction if this thing continues to go on. When you look at the exponential growth curve of what this looks like, we're talking about this thing going on for months, like, you know, June, July, August. And with the limited amount of supplies we're having, obviously the limited amount of medical staff, the limited amount of facilities, the limited amount of beds, ventilators, even, you know, the supplies that people need in order to treat patients. We're trying to flatten the curve as best as possible. You know, I've been talking lately about the measures that we might take to start to move toward, you know, saying, all right, well, maybe if we have these antibody tests, people are able to go back out into society. I just feel like we're at a crossroads, man. So the Hungarian parliament passed votes to let Viktor Orban rule by decree in wake of the pandemic. It was approved on Monday, 138 votes in favor, 53 against. Its provisions go well beyond the various forms of legislation hastily put together by the EU members states in response to the pandemic, dramatically ramping up the strongman leaders' powers. The suspension of parliament, punishment for journalists if the government believes their reporting is not accurate, heavier penalties for violating quarantine regulations are all made possible by the order. No elections or referendums can be held while it's in place. You know, I see a lot of the progressive outlets talking about the election right now, and I kind of laugh because I'm like, no one cares about the election. Like, no one cares about the election. It's either you care about this thing that's going on, or you're trying to get your mind off it. You're not thinking like, oh man, what's Joe Biden doing? Who cares about Joe Biden's daily press conference? Like, everyone I talk to doesn't care. No one even knows that there's an election going on right now. Like, we have really big problems right now. So the idea that President Trump would need to stay in office for a little bit longer, it's not really going to matter because it's not like Joe Biden has a chance of winning anyway. But who's thinking about the election? So when you look at and you see this Hungarian parliament issuing this order about no elections or referendums can be held, that this is the urgent matter. There's nothing else to talk about. Today is the 30th. You know, the first is tomorrow or 2 days from now. We got bigger problems. Like, what are people going to do for money? And if authoritarian powers are you know, what the president is going to need in order to prevent this thing from spreading, one, I just don't think he's that type of guy. I don't think he wants that at all. Either authoritarian rule, track everybody, make sure that people are following the orders, or let's maintain a positive attitude, hope people are recovering, look for these antibody tests, and hopefully start putting people back out into the workforce. Because I think these are really the only real options at this point. Unfortunately, not great options on either side, especially without a lot of information, but ultimately it seems like that's all we're really going to have. So I would love to hear what you guys think.